Hello, everybody. Welcome to NFA Live. I am joined by a new fantastic duo of Ben and Guy in Dubai. That's a good rhyme. Anyhow, gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, Rob. It's good to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How's everything over in Dubai? This is the first time you guys have ever met face to face.
Well, yeah, we met last night for the first time, which was kind of crazy to think about, a little surreal.
Yeah.
Because we were talking, we've been doing NFA Live together, I think, since the end of 2022, I believe.
Yeah. So basically 3 years working together, quite a lot, fairly closely, getting to know each other pretty well, but only met in person for the first time last night. We had a very nice dinner. I'm pleased to report, well, Rob, you know this already because you've met Ben before, IRL, but I'm pleased to report Ben is exactly like he is on the screen. It's like you're never quite sure.
Just as boring in real life.
Just as likely to go off on one for 2 hours about Bitcoin dominance. But
well,
it's great. It's really great to meet you face to face.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I've seen a lot of things, and this is why I'm glad you guys are here, because you can kind of give us like the sentiment. Because right now, I think everybody's going through a little bit of a slump, especially with the price just kind of going up and down and kind of sideways chop and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see like what the energy level is over there, what you guys have seen, if there's any kind of advancements, especially going on in the crypto market, because it seems like from the outsiders looking in, there's really not much really going on. Quantitative tightening and easing, all that stuff. But I did see that there was a couple of different speeches that were given out. Ben, looks like you were talking you were put together with Nicholas Vayman from Bubble Maps, and you guys talked about a new way to trade, optimizing the AI and data.
Yeah, he was the moderator. It was me, and if you click that yellow arrow to the right, there should be another person on there as well. Nick was the moderator, and it was me and Alex. It was Alex and I on the actual panel.
Hey, you know what? How did that go? Because Nansen, I always use their smart money indicator, and I like it because it tracks what quote unquote smart money, but how they are dumping and selling and getting into stable coins, and it pretty much coincides with the big moves that are happening, especially if we take a look at like October 5th or 6th, when they sell off, it kind of goes up. So how did that go as far as like that speech between, not the speech, but the talk between you and him?
I think he was mostly talking about shorter term moves and like using AI to, do like some automated trading in some altcoins that I don't think I've heard of before, but I don't really think he was he wasn't talking as much about the longer term moves. He was more so looking at like data or trading automation, I think, with AI.
Yeah. Well, for some of us, that's like a big deal. For most of us, I think that's a big nothing burger, but it sounds good. And then Guy, I see that you were with Bonnie for talk about Creator Playbook. How'd that work out?
Well, it was great. It was me, Bonnie, and then another YouTuber, a guy called Ben Cowan.
Yeah.
Look at that.
He
look
had
at
a
that
lot to say.
Yeah.
We had that was really good fun to do. Like sometimes you do these things and you see the sort of 20 minutes on the clock and you're like, how am I going to talk for 20 minutes on, anything? But this one, it kind of really flew by. We were talking about, so our journeys, if you like, how we started making content and what we kind of learned along the way and what worked and what didn't, etc. And it was a really interesting kind of look back at how we started, because actually, for most of us, in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't all that long ago. But of course, because this is crypto and it ages you like 5 years for every one, it feels like it was, around about the end of the 19th century that we started, we started making crypto content. So it was quite interesting to look back on that. And also just think about, I think it was aimed a lot at people who were maybe thinking about creating their own sort of content or starting out on that course. And so it was good to try and offer some pearls of wisdom there. But it's always kind of interesting to look back and think, gosh, yeah, I remember when we were doing that and when we were doing that, and it really sort of puts in perspective how much, how far you've come in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I look back at my portfolio and see how far I've dropped. But yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, things are looking pretty good. But I did see there was a couple of good posts, and this is I think the big thing about getting together for these types of conferences is that you get to meet the people that you interact with. So I like this. It looks like you guys had dinner with Crypto Kid, and then Dana. That looks pretty fun. And then you also looks like Guy. You were interviewed by Randy. And
it was lovely to meet Randy. Yeah, and we had a really good chat on that giant armchair. I tell you, there is no dignified way to get on and off one of those things. You have to resign yourself to looking like a bit of a fool. But it was great. I mean, yeah, for someone who's I think less than half my age, she is she was quite sort of like, she was like, "You want to do an interview?" I was like, "Yep, sure, okay," and. But she was great. We had a really interesting chat. Yeah, I mean, and as you say, that's kind of the fun of these events. You meet people who you've seen on the screen, or who you've seen on Twitter and wherever, and it's great to connect like that and just talk. I mean, Ben, you were saying this is your 6th interview today.
Seventh.
Yes. Lucky 7.
Yeah, so, lucky for you guys. Yeah. So. No, I was going to say that, matter of fact, Randy just sent me a text. She goes, "Hey, remind Guy to follow me because he said he was going to. And if he doesn't, I'm going to punch him." I'm like, okay, I'll let him know. So
she said that to me, and I kind of believed her. I was like, once I get back on the Twitter, I will. I mean, I don't dare do otherwise. But it was great. It was great fun, and it's nice to just kind of waffle with other people in the industry. But we missed the CZ Peter Schiff debate, unfortunately.
Yeah, so like I just saw bits and pieces of it. I think this was like the big takeaway is CZ was sitting down with Peter Schiff, and they just brought out this gold bar from nowhere. And this is what he said. Everybody just take a listen. Hopefully you can hear this.
To understand 1,000 grams fine gold, 99.9.9, and a serial number. Try it.
Yes, heavy.
Is it real gold or no?
Well, I don't know. I mean, is this what you're trying to? I mean, let's see how it looks. Well, the color.
Yeah, so just got a little flabbergasted, but I mean, it's the same thing all the time. When Peter's there, they go back and forth, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And he's like, "It's fraud, it's fake," and then gold's the best thing, and then of course, no, Bitcoin's the best thing. But that part right there, I think, was a pretty good telling thing. So, shout out to CZ for making Peter just actually think about things. But what I want to get to you guys, and the question is what is the sentiment right now? I mean, besides that nice debate that we had there, like it seems like we are just kind of chopping sideways. People are getting tired. I've never seen that meme so much on Twitter from the Green Mile, where he's like, "I'm tired, boss." And what is the exuberance that you're feeling? Is it there or is it not there?
I think it was a little more there than a few weeks ago in Amsterdam, but I think that was because price was up the last couple of days. I mean, all in all, I do think people are getting a little tired. There's a lot of apathy setting in. How could there not be, right? Like Bitcoin's been trading. I mean, Bitcoin right now is at the same price it was a year ago, right? I mean, December of 2024, I'm pretty sure we were right around the same price that we are now. So yeah, I certainly think there's some apathy setting in. I mean, there's definitely some enthusiasm as well in certain pockets of the sector. I still see a lot of interest by people in like the stable coins. But I mean, I think there are a lot of people that are developing some form of apathy at this point, because it's like, all right, like where are we going? And it's really interesting because back in 2022, I feel like a lot of people were really hoping that the cycle the bull market would continue. This year I feel like people are more resigned. Yeah. At this point it's like, yeah, we're in a bear market. Yeah. Like it is what it is. Here we go again. Yeah, so I mean, I do think there's some similarities with 2021, but there's also some big differences in the sense of like, the high we had in October was more so a high on apathy rather than euphoria. It's really it's the same in many ways, but it's also different in some ways.
Yeah. I think there's a sense as well, like back in 2021, I remember there was a real sense, and in 2017, of course, but in those years, there was a real sense that kind of, as far as crypto was concerned, like anything was possible. Like we were really kind of on the cusp, and there were all these great things. And yeah, I think everyone kind of knew that a lot of these experiments, most of these experiments would fail. But there would be some winners, and it would be like in the .com boom. We would get sort of filleted down, and we would end up with a handful of projects that were genuinely transformative, and that like everyone would be using. And I think the problem with now is that we are actually getting closer to that goal, but it hasn't arrived yet. We do actually have projects that people are using. We do actually have useful things. I would point to DeFi first and foremost, because I think, that's certainly a sector that I'm using a lot. And I think a lot of other people are as well. And obviously stable coins as well, although they aren't nearly as glamorous. And I think that kind of doesn't really help because, you can't have massive gains with stable coins, obviously. So I think now the sentiment is, it's sort of like, okay, we know we've made progress along that road. We're getting close to there being, really cool stuff, but we're not there yet. And it feels like perhaps we should be. And obviously when you factor underperforming altcoins into that and price underperforming generally, I think that kind of feeds into it, because it feels like a bit of a crossroads moment. And then, of course, you have, I think, the realization, and I'm sure we've talked about this on NFA Live before and various other places, but, 2021, crypto was the brand new thing. I mean, it wasn't brand new, obviously, but it's still, for most people coming into it, so many people came to it in 2021, and it was new and it was shiny. And now it's not new and shiny because AI is new and shiny. And in some ways, kind of putting crypto to shame, because AI is being, the usage of that is going exponential. So we do still have, amazing technology on our hands, at our fingertips, that is improving day to day. I'm talking about crypto here as well as AI. But in terms of crypto, it hasn't quite found its fit yet, apart from in stable coins, which, as I said, is not somewhere where you're going to get 100x gains unless there's something very, very wrong with the stable coin in question. So, I think it does feel, I think people are kind of like, well, what now? Is it another brand new layer one like we've seen with Monad, which looks great? Tech is great, but do we need it? What is next? What is the thing that is gonna make this sector pop again?
Yeah, well said. And I will tell you, like with AI, I know people will say, well, we've been around so long, and we're gonna move up. But I mean, look, AI came out, 2.5 years ago to the general population, and look how far it's come. And you have to compare that to what's going on with digital assets and crypto. And if you can't take a look objectively and say, you know what, we're just not moving like we should, it's just the truth. I hate to say it, but that's just how it goes. And I know that's why people are always so excited when I talk about stuff like that. Anyhow, so I guess the last question will be this, and then we'll get into a little Q&A. Is, as you're walking around and you're talking to different people, even like people in the booths, are they accepting that the bear market is here, or are they in that in between where they're like, well, okay, the bear market's here, but this new bull market is coming because fill in the blank, banana zone, quantitative tightening, quantitative easing, rate cuts, new Fed chair, and everything else, and it's gonna be fantastic. Like, what's the consensus there?
I think there's a mix. I mean, there's definitely some people that more so believe in a longer cycle, that it's going to continue into 2026 because of liquidity. I think the biggest counterpoint to those arguments is that those same arguments were given 8 or 9 months ago, right? I mean, we were talking about, think back to like March and April, May, June, the Bitcoin overlaid with the lagged M2 chart. And, if that was kind of like what people were talking about back then, and, Bitcoin never followed it. So, I think a lot of it is just kind of kicking the can down the road and kind of hoping it works this time, even though it hasn't. So I think there's some people that definitely believe. I think one of the reasons they believe is because Like I think there's a lot of there's like the idea that you can't have a top without an alt season is kind of how I think a lot of people are thinking of it, or at least some people. But you know, I still, and this is kind of what the view I've been preaching, right? Is that like this is kind of like a 2019 style top where we did have a top without an alt season. And it was also, you know, the top back then occurred a couple months before QT ended, just like this time, right? Bitcoin topped October. December is when QT ends. Same thing happened in 2019. Bitcoin topped in June, and then QT ended on August 1st, right? So in a lot of ways, it's like really similar to that, and that's kind of the view that I think makes the most amount of sense. So I've been sort of propagating that view as much as I can. But yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a mix because there's definitely a lot of people that are very, very bullish going into 2026. And I mean, I think there's some scenarios where some things go to new all-time highs. I mean, even in 2022, I mean, we had Luna putting in new all-time highs even in 2022. So it's not impossible for you to see like some divergent highs on altcoins. But if you look at social interest in general, it's really low, and it does not really support an alt season right now. Normally you see it trending higher for months before you have an alt season. So that's kind of why I'm on that side. So I would say there's like a mix. There's like a mix of people who are bullish. There's a mix of people who are bearish. But I do think that both sides are open to being wrong. I mean, even the guys that are calling for a longer cycle, they're like, look, if it doesn't happen by March, like we'll move on and say that, all right, it's over. And then likewise, like for people that are in my camp, I'm like, well, look, if we put in a new all-time high in 2026, if Bitcoin's putting a new all-time high in 2026, then they're right. You know, the other guys are right. So I think the reason why there's more openness is because I think over the last few years, at some point, like everyone has been humbled. Like everyone's been humbled. So to go out with a lot of confidence and say, no, this is what has to happen would be kind of a reflection of like, we haven't learned anything. Like, so I think there's people are on both sides, but I do think people are willing to kind of accept either outcome.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think a lot of people are sort of like, well, maybe we do just have to be patient and see how this thing plays out because, oh no, I had them wrong way around.
Reverse.
Such rank amateurism. I'm sorry. I think just we have to see what happens because so many people I talked to today were referencing all the good news that we've had, and there's more good news coming. The SEC chair Paul Atkins was talking about the innovation exemption a couple of days ago. He said, it's coming in January, and that's huge. That's going to make all crypto stuff basically legal in the US for, I think, a so far unspecified period of time. But it's gonna take the brakes off the industry, in terms of what they're able to do. So, whether that translates to simple things like fee switches and revenue sharing and things like that, or much more creative innovation. But we've got things like that coming. And I was saying to someone in the taxi on the way over to the event today, if let's say just over a year ago, so before Trump got elected and all the excitement around that kicked off, but I think if a year ago you'd showed me a load of headlines from just the last few weeks related to crypto and said, given that this is all the context you have, what do you think the market will look like? And I would have said, well, Bitcoin probably above 150, alts going bananas, take me there now. and it's just, it's the opposite of that. I think people are realizing that, okay, this is not, this is trading a lot more in line with kind of macro, the macro environment. Stocks and Bitcoin are quite often moving together these days. So we just have to be patient and let this thing play out and let companies, let projects in this space innovate and hope that they innovate well enough that people pick this stuff up and start using it.
Yeah, well said. I mean, hopefully we can get out of this little sideways trend and things actually move forward. So, guys, thanks for coming in. I know you guys have done a lot of things. Let's just go through a couple of questions, and then we'll get you out of here for your 10th and 12th interview of the day. and go from there. So let's see. First person says, Bullish says, I can't believe this is the first time that Ben met Guy. I thought you guys are like good friends in real life. The magic of the internet. And it's true. Like I think I met Ben the first time, gosh, some Bitcoin conference like a couple of years ago. And then Guy just
I think.
Yeah.
I think we met for the first time was it in Nashville? Did I ever meet you in Miami?
No. It was Nashville.
Yeah, I think the first time I met you was in Nashville when you came over to the Airbnb.
Yeah, like 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, come on over. We're doing this.
Yeah, it was pretty early, pretty late.
I mean, for me, I'm old. Let's see. How about this one? I got a question about institutions. The fact that more and more companies are stacking Bitcoin. Do you think they're the reason it can go down more than 60 to 7? That's pretty sharp. 60 to 7% because they will sell. I know, Guy, you just put out a video which is really good about Michael Saylor, or Strategy selling off. But as far as DATs, what's the consensus there when you guys are talking to people about people putting Bitcoin or Ethereum on their balance sheet?
Well, I mean, we know that DATs are selling. We know that a lot of DATs are in trouble. And I think anyone who's been in this industry for longer than about 5 minutes, when we saw this DAT thing coming a few months ago, earlier this year, I think pretty much every kind of veteran was just like, well, this is good, this is encouraging, but there is a real risk here. And if these guys get margin called, if these guys get forced to sell, this is gonna flip very bearish very quickly. So it's definitely a risk. And I mean, what we found in that video, what we found researching that, was actually the impact of strategy selling in terms of the actual supply hitting the market. It wouldn't be the be all and end all. It wouldn't be the end of the world. The problem is the psychological effect, the psychological impact. Michael Saylor, the high priest of Bitcoin, the diamond-handed God figure. If he starts selling BTC, is that it? Is it over? And of course it isn't. But perception is everything. So I think that's the real risk. It's that this whole thing flips. And but shortly after we made that video, Strategy announced that they had this, they'd got this big cash pile. They'd sold some more Class A preferred stock, and they were covered for, 2 years was sort of kicked around, because obviously there was concerns that they might not be able to meet their dividend payments or their debt payments. So it looks like, if we're to take Strategy at their word, it looks like they're okay. But obviously you have all these other companies now. And I think a lot of them are have probably already sold a fair amount of their stack.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially as we come into the human psychology. We can talk all about, like Ben talked about, quantitative tightening and easing. But this just happened August 2019. We had quantitative tightening ending. And then we had rate cuts. Quantitative easing had like 8 months later, and the price of Bitcoin went down a little bit. So we'll see how it works out. But yeah, it's a good point. Here's some random, not to get into huge Bitcoin dominance discussion, but it is still high for when we are in the 4-year cycle. Shouldn't it be dropping by now? The next question is, when is the next Bitcoin dominance video? Last one I saw was a paltry 20 minutes. Sad.
Guy, you're gonna have to increase the time on this.
Like put the restaurant booking back.
So what I think, if you look at 2019 really, really closely, QT ended August 1st. Bitcoin dominance topped about a month later. And the reason why it looks like, if you look at the balance sheet of the Fed, it looks like it didn't start going up until September. But that's true. Even though QT had already ended, the balance sheet continued to drop, and it was because the last batch of treasuries didn't mature until a few weeks after QT ended. So the balance sheet continued to drop. And so what happened back then is that the people that were waiting for QE for their altcoins to pump, when QE arrived, or when they thought it was arriving, they watched the balance sheet continue to drop. A lot of people then capitulated, and then Bitcoin dominance spiked up one final time. About a month after quantitative tightening ended. So I think one way this could play out, and it is somewhat of an unfortunate view, but I've never strayed away from providing those, is what could happen in 2026 is that, if there truly is no alt season, which I feel like has to be the base case right now, in the short term is that you could see altcoins rally against Bitcoin in many parts of 2026, just like they rallied against Bitcoin in the second half of 2019. But the reason that they rally against Bitcoin is because they're not dropping as much as Bitcoin in a potential bear market. Because in 2019, dominance went down in the second half of 2019, but it was because Bitcoin was just dropping more than alts. And if you think about it, like fundamentally why that would make sense is in the 2019 bull market, Bitcoin was essentially the only thing going up. Like altcoins were going up, but they were lagging Bitcoin a lot. And so by the time Bitcoin turned, it dropped more than altcoins because altcoins were already annihilated. They were already down a lot. And if you look today at a lot of alts from 2021, most altcoins from 2021 are closer to their 2022 lows than their 2021 highs right now. So, like if Bitcoin were to drop, say 50% from the highs and go back to 60 or 70K, there's a decent chance that in that drop, Bitcoin dominance would drop itself just simply because the altcoins already have gotten annihilated over the last 3 to 4 years. So I think that could play out. And then what would be required for things to start looking good again would probably be, a lot more money printing and a lot lower interest rates. And, we'll probably get to that point eventually, but I don't think it's going to happen any earlier than mid 2026. I mean, Powell is going to be replaced by mid 2026 as chair of the Federal Reserve. And so that's probably going to lead to, that'll probably be somewhat bearish for Bitcoin dominance as rates go lower and as the Fed funds rate goes below the neutral rate. By the way, if you look at the 2-year yield and the Fed funds rate, I don't think we've ever had an alt season when the Fed funds rate was higher than the 2-year yield. And right now, the Fed funds rate is still higher than the 2-year yield. I think the 2-year yield's around 3.5%, and then the Fed funds rate is still 4%. So if Powell comes out in a few days and cuts rates by 100 basis points, then maybe everything changes. But if it's only 25 basis points, it's probably not going to really move the needle a whole lot. So that's kind of what I think about Bitcoin dominance. And it's funny because it actually everything that's playing out right now played out like it played out last cycle. It's just that last cycle it all played out by the end of 2019 because monetary policy loosened up a lot sooner in the cycle. This cycle it's just taking a lot longer for that same process to play out. What's funny is that the 4-year cycle could still end up being true once again. It's just that the bear market happens from an apathetic top rather than a euphoric top, just like 2019. It's funny how it lines up once again, where we go into the post-halving year or the midterm year, and people are hoping that the bear market doesn't happen, but then you start to see prices drop as we get into Q4, and you're like, crap, it's happening again.
Yeah, it's something that I think could potentially happen. But boy, wouldn't that be interesting if the 4-year cycles did actually play out, even though we've got a lot of people saying there's no way that could actually hold true. We'll see.
Right.
Time will tell. Last question, and then we'll get out of here. You guys can do your thing. Thoughts on the bear market being possibly shorter? I think when we say bear market, people just naturally assume we're talking about, it'll be here for, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and then we start to get a little bit of a turnaround. But do you think that because of what's happening, we could actually see it? I think, if we're going to have quantitative tightening, which ended December 1st, quantitative easing comes in and balance sheets and money gets printed even more so. How much more money can we actually print? And the M2 money supply globally is higher than it's ever been. And I just don't, it just seems like Guy even alluded to in the beginning, AI is sucking up a lot of that. And there's a good reason, because there's actual utility in moving forward, even though we have a lot of utility now. But do you see this being shorter? And can you kind of overlay that with what people are telling you over there at the conference?
If you look at what happened in 2019, by the way, Rob, if you go to the website, we just added a new chart that I'm sure you're going to want to reference here. If you go to the search bar and just type in QT, you'll see the new chart. But yeah, I could see a low as early as the summer. It's not impossible for it to be a shorter bear market. I think I'm going into it mentally with my. You need to go to charts. Yeah, I think I'm going into it mentally, just thinking, all right, the low is going to be October of 2026 or around there, because the bear markets are normally 1 year. But if you look at this chart, it sort of let's exclude the pandemic for a minute. Like we're not calling for a repeat of the pandemic necessarily, but you need to reset the Zoom too. But if you look at that and you say if you exclude the pandemic, it would suggest the price kind of just bleeds into the summer. And then if it starts going up after the summer, it could be the narrative could be, all right, we have lower rates and you know, the money printers are coming back on. And so I could see it playing out in a similar fashion where you have a low as early as the summer of 2026. What's really interesting is if you look at MicroStrategy stock price, it's almost a carbon copy of what happened in 2021. And back then, MicroStrategy actually more or less bottomed in May. It then swept the low, I think, in December. But the low for MicroStrategy back then was essentially May on that first wick down. So yeah, I could see it being shorter, but I do think we need to be prepared for it. You know, for it potentially taking until October or Q4 of 2026.
Well said. Guy, last one. What do you think as far as consensus and what you're seeing over there? Shorter bear market or just like the same?
I mean, I think a shorter bear market is definitely possible. Again, given all the supposedly bullish tailwinds that still lie ahead, and a remarkably pro-crypto US administration that's obviously going to be heading into the midterms towards the end of next year. So if you believe that, has a vested interest in running the markets hot, and crucially, like virtually every other US administration, is not shy about holding back on the money printer. I mean, we were talking about this last night, weren't we? It's just every administration comes in, they say, they trash talk the previous one, they say what a mess they've left the economy and blah blah blah. They were terrible, and then they basically do the same thing, which is print more money,
right?
Borrow more.
Because what's the alternative, right? What is the alternative?
Yeah, that's the problem with living in a democracy. It's because if you say that you won't print any money, if you say that you'll take money out of the system and try and pay back that debt, no one's going to vote for you.
Right.
So we're in a kind of we're in a doom loop spiral just to more and more debt. So. With those considerations, I could see it. I could see it being shorter, but as I've said before, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, well said, gentlemen. So I'll just say this: that as time goes on, I'm short-term bearish right now, but I buy Bitcoin every single day because as long as the government keeps debasing money, what's the point of carrying cash? It just kind of goes down. The dollar goes down. That's it for today. So look, there's a link in the description. If you don't follow Ben and Guy, which I highly doubt, there'll be a link there to follow them, and also the website that we.
So you can just follow me at Coin Bureau.
Just Coinbureau. Ben will be tweeting for us and making videos for us as well. That's
a hell of an intern. All right, so everybody, thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Adios.
See ya.
Cheers.